What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and unit review of Desert Saber that we've got with the Jehanna Banner, and he also brings an amazing weapon in Jehanna Lance Plus. So he is a Lance Infantry unit this time, and this inheritable weapon is on the level of the Arcane Lances that we have got. So it's a 14 might weapon that has got Phantom Speed plus 7 built in. This is going to be helping a lot of the speedy units with their speed checks of Gust, Godlike Reflexes, with many of the damage reduction skills and stuff like Clever Fighter. So it is really useful, and at sort of both phases, if he is within 2 spaces of an ally, then he grants himself and the allies in 2 spaces the plus 6 attack and speed buff, the dodge status, and the null debuff status. So the visible buffs are really good for making use of something like D bonus doubler and bonus doubler 4, as you give that to the allies in 2 spaces. So even if you're facing an enemy with a lull or dull skill, you're still going to be counting the buffs of your allies. And the dodge status is definitely not as good as before because it is completely pierceable damage reduction, but still, dodge status does give you the AoE damage reduction, which can definitely help along with the stone terrain to tank some of the AoE specials like from Emblem Sigurd. And then null debuffs is really helpful because we have got so many debuffs flying around nowadays, and you don't really need to run any kind of unity skill along with this skill. So it provides good support to your allies, and even if you yourself cannot use the dodge status, you can give that to the other allies. And for the unit themselves in the combat, if they are in 3 spaces of an ally, then they get plus 5 to all of their stats in the combat, 7 flat damage reduction on foes first attacks including the brave hits, and also the full damage reflection. And this is going to be stacking with any kind of damage reduction. So this is the full damage reflection and not the limited one like we have seen in, Counter Roar, on Calyx Weapon Refine, on Petrine's Weapon Refine. So this is more like the damage reflection of Hans and Echidna. So it is going to be stacking up with any kind of damage reduction that you could have on this unit. So it inherently has synergy with the dodge status. So you want to run these units with Excel skills, with Lagu's Friend, with any kind of skills and with any kind of support that can give them more damage reduction. And damage reflection is extremely powerful nowadays because units hit so hard nowadays, so you're able to reflect that damage. And a lot of times if you run Miracle as your special, or if you provide the support of Ymir or Fallen Maria, then you're able to survive with Miracle and then reflect back all of the damage and just kill the enemy even if they are someone like Nidogre and really bulky. So damage reflection is always going to be staying as a very powerful effect that you could have nowadays, and this weapon just gives that to you in its full nature. So this is going to be one of the better weapons that we have got for the lances, and in my opinion this is the best lance right now, even better than Arcane Lewin. Arcane Lewin's true damage and minus 1 special cooldown can help you in many of the scenarios, but overall I do think that Jehanna Lance is a lot better because of the damage reflection and the 7 flat damage reduction that you get, and you also get the visible status effects. So it's overall gonna be a pretty nice weapon you could run until we get the 3rd Arcane Lance, hopefully this year. And Arcane Xiang also has its usage in Gale Force strategies because it does give you these special charges, but overall as a weapon, even slower units can try and run Jehanna Lance and get the damage reflection. And like I said, it is such a strong effect that you could just give that to any kind of unit. And for the faster units, they're able to make use of the dodge and the phantom speed. And even if you run this on any kind of dancer or refresher, then they're able to provide the support to your other allies. So this is a really versatile lance that can work on a lot of different units. The best thing about this lance is that it's not an arcane lance, which means that you can keep your preferred skills. So for example, if you got the Frame Tribe Lyn from the Holoforms, then you could just give her Jehanna Lance Plus and give her the flat damage reduction and still make use of Gust with Lagu's Friend that you might have gotten in the Holoforms. So it is going to be better than a lot of the preferred weapons of many of the older units, unfortunately. And you can also run this on many of the armors, and you could try and use the phantom speed of this weapon with Clever Fighter. So it is going to be helping with the speed check, and we don't really have the speed variants of the Twin Save or even the Briar Save. So with the Briar Save, it is going to be an interesting option with its flat damage reduction and the damage reflection. But right now, we don't really have the speed version, so you could stick with the attack and defense version. And unfortunately, this weapon, because of not having the -1 special cooldown, in my opinion, does make it so that you're not able to utilize Shield Fighter to its full potential, because you're not able to run Emblem Marth with Pavis or Aegis, and you're forced to run Sacred Cowl or Escutcheon. So that's why I think that you could run some other slot-based skill, and for the Shield Fighter builds, you might as well wait for the 3rd Arcane Lance. And this also has amazing application on Fiorm, who comes with a damage reflection special in Ice Mirror. So even though this got a remix, I still prefer the first Ice Mirror because it has got the damage reflection, and you can try and stack up the damage reflection and do so much damage. And it's fine that even if you're not fast, you're still able to get, so much damage reflection, and you perfectly use Ice Mirror with Lagoose Friend that you can just one-shot the enemies. And like I said, it does have good synergy with D-Bonus Doubler, and you could also run Defense Rest Pledge, which you get at the same time from Attune Sida. And this way you can fully buff yourself up and take full advantage of the slot A skill. You could even try and speed stack on this Fiorm, but personally I think that she's really not going to be all that fast even if you speed stack on her at this point. And it's not like Jehanna Lance provides you with plus 14 to her stats or something like that. So I think that at this point focusing on her attack and resistance is going to be a bit better. And you can also run this on many of the flyers if they have good enough defense or resistance to make use of Pegasus Rift or Wyvern Rift, because it can give them the flat damage reduction. It also gives them the guaranteed follow-up attack, and it also has the Rift effect, the half frozen effect. So it is really useful along with the Excel skill, which gives you a lot of flat damage reduction. So you can stack this up and then reflect back all of the damage. And you could run no quarter on these kinds of units, but providing them some kind of special cooldown support so that they could trigger it in a single run of combat is going to be nice, because they need to run Emblem Secret Ring so that they can get the +1 movement and the Canto. It is worth noting that the Rift skills do not take the Phantom Speed in account with their speed and resistance or speed or defense check. So the Jehanna Lance Phantom Speed is not going to be helpful in that regard, but still, the damage reflection is always helpful. Even Cavaliers could try and make use of this, even though they have got limited options. You could try and run more of a player phase build with Flow Guard 4 and get the null follow-up that way and be bulky and then reflect back the damage. And you could also run this with many of the Lance Infantry units that are old that may not have a lot of defenses for Lagoose Friend. So you could run the new Lagoose Royalty and you can get the damage reduction piercing from the Tempo Echo skill instead. So perfect attack speed is going to be really nice as you get the full null follow-up, and then Lagoose Loyalty gives you the flat damage reduction, a bit of true damage, and also the half frozen effect, the other half. And then Time Pulse Edge also gives you the extra offenses. And you could try and run Emblem Secret Ring and be a bit more offensive if you don't want to go the full enemy phase route, and this way you're going to be able to trigger godlike reflexes when the enemy attacks you, and then you reflect back any of the damage. A lot of the refreshers can try and run this weapon because they are going to be providing the support to their allies, and infantry dancers can just run infantry null follow-up or infantry pulse 4. Unfortunately, this weapon does overlap a bit with the Firestorm dance and Rock Slide dance, so you could try and run the cantrip skill, and even an older dancer like Azura can provide some utility. You could also run this on the flying dancers, and they can provide the crux support, which acts like a pseudo half null follow-up, so that way you're able to double and get the reflection. And Soaring Echo is always going to be an option, and even if you are very slow, you can still run skills like Reopening, for example, and just get the flat damage reduction and retaliate back with no quarter if you've got some special charges support from your allies. And you could even try and run this with Escutcheon, Pavis, or even Miracle on many of these units that may not have access to stuff like godlike reflexes, so that way you're able to survive and then just reflect back the damage. And as I was saying, even on the slower units, you could try and run this with Boulder and Lagoose Friend and just stack up the damage reduction, and you're going to be having more of a one-shot playstyle. But if you want to get the guaranteed follow-up attack, then you could simply support them with any kind of flyer that has got the Crux skill in their weapon refine, like Gaul or Dihorba, or you could just run the Crux skill on a flyer. Coming back to Saber, he does have Shield Pulse 3 at 5-star, and this is the first time we have got this skill. in the Grail pool, and the old Saber was the first unit to bring this skill into the game. This was definitely a really new skill for a lot of strategies because it lets you use your defensive specials and gives you the Quicken Pulse cooldown -2. And I believe this was one of the first skills, if not the first one, to give you the flat damage reduction. So this can be a bridge fodder for Buffer 4 in the Divine Codes, or maybe if we get some kind of Shield Pulse 4, it could be helpful with that. He also has Speed Defense Finish 3 at 4-star, which we just got on Dew. And we also have it on Caspar, and the thing that troubles me is that who is inheriting Speed Defense Finish 4 from Attuned Chimera? You're going to be prioritizing Lagoo's Friend with Time Pulse Echo most of the time. I wish they just gave us Attack Speed Finish 3 because there are just so many units with the tier 4 version, and that kind of bridge fodder is a lot more useful. But still, even the fodder of Saber is good, and he does have an attack super boon with his 47 base attack. So if you're going to be ascending an asset, that could be helpful. But for his main boon, he does like having the speed boon. He does have base 46 speed, and he has got 199 BST, so he can be a decent scoring unit in Arena if you kit him out with distant counter melee and a lot of the expensive skills. And comparing him to the other free-to-play Lance units, you can see that he is a bit of an upgrade of Ninja Saizo because he has got 5 more attack while still having similar defense. He does have a bit less resistance compared to him, but still offensively it is going to be a bit better. And compared to Jared, he has got the same attack stat and a bit more speed and so much more defense, but Jared just ends up having a bit more of a balanced stat spread with his resistance, but still his resistance isn't really all that high. If you're going to be investing in Desert Saber, then just keep in mind that you need to update him with the arcane weapons and stuff because he doesn't have his own preferred weapon. But until we get the third arcane lance, I think Jehanna Lance Plus is his best weapon, so there's no need for giving him Arcane Luin or something like that. And you could just run him with the speed resistance finish Sacred Seal and drive speed on a budget, and you could just have reposition. Emblem Secret Ring could work, even Emblem Marth Ring could work. On a budget, at least he's going to be buffing up your allies, and that could help with the Shadows of Valentia roster. And if you're going to be investing in him a bit more with the merges, then you could give him the fodder of Divine Codes, and because he already has Shield Pulse 3, he can easily get Buffer 4, and then he can get the Finish 4 skill and Godlike Reflexes from Severa's Combat Manual, and then you can just run Infantry Null Follow 4 from the Divine Codes and have him have a lot of the important effects that you want to have on these kinds of units, with the Null Follow-Up, with the Tempo, with the Finish, the Healing, and then Godlike Reflexes with Emblem Marth Ring, so that he could pre-charge it with Buffer 4. And unfortunately, the damage reduction of Buffer 4 is completely pierceable, so if you want to upgrade him a bit, then you can run Spiked Wall skill. So if you don't want to go the full enemy phase route, and if you want to have a bit more of a player phase build, then this is something you could try and run. So you could get Gust, Attack Speed XL, and Endless Tempest from Brave Felix. And this way you're able to have some flat damage reduction with the XL skill and also with Spiked Wall, which does give you Null Guard, which makes it so that you can trigger Gust on your double as you're going to be reflecting back the damage, and you also take advantage of the true damage and the flat damage reduction provided by the Spiked Wall. And Endless Tempest gives you the Dull effect, which is always really helpful. So you could run this if you don't want to have the standard tanking build, but the standard tanking build is a standard for a reason. So you could try and run the bonus doubler. It is amazing with Jehanna Lance and its visible buffs, and you could also run Lagoo's Friend because he does have enough defense to make the full use out of it and get a good amount of flat damage reduction and also true damage. And with Lagoo's Friend, you get the full damage reduction piercing. So you could run this with Gust because Jehanna Lance doesn't give you a -1 special cooldown. So Gust could be a 3 cooldown special, and then Breath of Life can give you the healing. Time Pulse Echo does come with Lagoo's Friend from Attuned Chimera. And if you're going to be running this kind of build with the third Arcane Lance, then you would need to change Gust to Godlike Reflexes, because then Gust becomes a 2 cooldown special, and then it wouldn't work with Lagoo's Friend. But with Jehanna Lance, this is perfectly functional, and you could easily run him with the supports like Ronan and Sethith for having more flat damage reduction. And you could also try and run a Prime skill. Now, I know Prime skills have fallen, and I'm not the first one to suggest them anymore. So with Jehanna Lance, technically you can activate the prime skill and its distant counter effect all by yourself if you run infantry null follow-up 4, which gives you the null follow-up status and the order status. So you don't really have to depend on anyone, but if you don't want these status effects to be stolen, then you could run him with either of the Nidogers and get the dosage status and be immune to the stealing. So this is also an option if you want to get the distant counter effect, but honestly I do like distant bonus doubler a bit more. But if you really want to run the prime skill and you've got an itch for it, then it is possible with this weapon. And then finally, if you want to run him with Lagoo's Loyalty, then you could try and run him with that. And even if you don't have Lagoo's Loyalty, you could still run the same build with Lagoo's Friend. The thing is that perfect attack speed is amazing so that you could get the full null follow-up from your slotty skill, and you can get Tempo Echo to give you the tempo effect and the 50% damage reduction piercing. So having some damage reduction piercing is helpful, as Lagoo's Loyalty lacks that. And honestly, Saber can go either way. He has enough defense to run Lagoo's Friend and get a good amount of flat damage reduction out of it. But if you want to get the frozen effect out of Lagoo's Loyalty, then it is something you could try and run. And you also get Time Pulse Edge at the same time. So this could be used in Arena with distant counter melee Sacred Seal, and he's going to be scoring as much as Murdoch and Fallen Lloyd. So even though he's not at the level of Panette or Marnie, he's still able to score decently. And with his Jehanna Lance, he is going to be able to provide the perfect buffs with Marnie's buffs if you also run her, because she buffs up defense and resistance, and then Saber buffs up attack and speed, and you get even more status effects on your units. So they have good synergy. And keep in mind that even if you give him the third Arcane Lance, it is not going to be outscoring Jehanna Lance. The arcane weapons and the usual inhittable weapons score the same, so you're not really going to be having a score bump. You could also run Emblem Ike Ring for more unpierceable damage reduction, and you don't really want to run Emblem Marth Ring if you're running him with Lagoo's Friend or Lagoo's Loyalty. I want to thank all of my team members for their constant support, and you can click the link on the screen right now to check out my breakdown of the Desert Banner, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as the Arcane Lances after seeing Jehanna Lance. So with that, so let's see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.